Well, this is a presentation that I gave in Krakow in Poland at the end of May 2017, and it was entitled Living Well Inside and Outside. And what I was speaking to the 120, 130 people there about was the connection between our inner worlds and our action in the outer world. And also how we move from me, a focus on me as an individual, to we, the collective, whether it's groups or communities, nations, or indeed the world as a whole, how we connect ourselves to the world around us. And I was there in my capacity as Get to the Point, and also as a member of the International Association of Facilitators. And I divided it into 4 bits. Firstly, really how I saw the disruptions and all the stuff that was going on around us, and just my take on that, how I understood that, and how I now begin to understand that. And then, based on that, my choice, sort of, so what? What do I do about that? And then I asked people to think about what their choice was. And this was a conference, I should say, the Profectus Conference, which was organized by students and recent students at the university there. And it was done beautifully. It was very professional, but also it had a real sort of heart and soul to it. So the audience were, I guess, generally pretty young. And I was saying, what is your choice at your stage in life? I make my choice at my stage in life. What is yours? And then offered some facilitation essentials. If your choice is facilitation, here are some essential things for you to think about. And before doing all of that, it felt right to me to honour my teachers, the people who've particularly influenced me over recent years, well, decades actually. And first was Lois and George. Lois died a year ago, but it was Lois and George who I first saw working with groups and thought, wow, they're doing magic. I would love to be able to do that. And then I did start doing it. But theirs was an inspiration, really, to me. And they then produced a book about a meeting together. That's the title. And I helped them produce that. Meeting together, how to transform your meetings, conferences, and other gatherings. So how you can really engage and meet together well with people and with purpose. And then I developed that into my own thinking of 5 Ps plus 1. So really wanted to honour them, and also to honour Nancy Klein, who was my coach for some 14 years or so. And the sessions, 2-hour sessions that I regularly had with Nancy, really helped me go deep and to think and to make shifts and transformation. So I want to recognize and honor the help that she gave me. And more recently, the Presencing Institute and the ULab process that I've recently engaged with. I say recently, about the last year or so. And I found that really helpful. It felt as if actually, I know this stuff, but I just could not articulate it. I couldn't get it out there. So that was frustrating. So they helped me articulate and really gave wonderful imagery and very clear thinking. So I want to honor those 3, particularly those 3 teachers. Of course, everybody else around me and all of us are teachers, but those 3 particularly over the last decades and the last year or so have been particularly helpful. So 3 images here, which are to do with how I understand the disruptions and the difficult and crazy and apparently crazy stuff that's happening, certainly challenging stuff that is happening right now. The first is the visible-invisible line. Yes, we know there is stuff which is visible or indeed audible. There are actions, there are words. We see that those impact on us, we hear them, we see them, that's visible. There are also those things which are invisible at varying degrees, and the first is structures and systems. And indeed in the conference, it was a traditional lecture theatre. I gave the example that, look, This was designed some years ago, and the image that those people had is a structure which we are now operating in. So the structures that are created by people then become the structures which shape us. So we shape our environment, and then that environment shapes us, and also systems, ways of doing things which are laid down and which we operate within. Underpinning that, there are ways of thinking, probably mainly which we are unaware of. We just think that way. We collectively think that way, which then turn into those structures and systems. Also then, underneath that, isn't there a source? You can call it what you like, but there is some kind of, the powerhouse, the energy, the essence. I've heard it called the fifth element, whatever, a source underneath that, which is invisible, but the product of that can become visible. So that's the first. The second, 3 levels. And these are from the Presencing and U theory, Presencing Institute and U theory. So there's me, here we are, there's me, well, there's for you, there's you, me in relation to nature, the physical environment that is around me. And for all of us, we are living at 1.5, the capacity of the planet to sustain itself. This is short-term way of carrying on. It seems like a great idea today and tomorrow, but we are living on borrowed time. We are living as if the planet that we're living on is 1.5 times the size that it actually is. It is not sustainable. Then there's a me and a we. This is me in relation to the people who are occupying that planet. What we know is there are enormous inequalities. There are divisions, a great divide between me and others. Here's a figure to illustrate it. I am told through the ULab work and presentation that 62 people, the richest 62 people, have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 3.7 billion people. 62 balancing 3.7 billion. Imagine that on a kind of scale with a pivot in the middle. 62 at one end, 3.7 billion the other end. Well, that is also unsustainable. That thing just creates such an enormous tension and pressure, quite apart from whether you think it's morally justifiable or a good idea or not. So there is that division alongside the division, the divide between me and nature. And then thirdly, there's a division between me and myself. On the slide, you'll see self is in gold. Myself. What I mean by that is my greatest future possibilities, the future that I the future me, if you like, the future me, the future that I could become. The extent to which I'm not that creates a tension between me now and my future self. And that tension can create many things. For example, depression, or maybe just a sense of longing, of wanting to be somewhere else. It's not right, I want to be somewhere else. I long for something in the future. It can create, as I say, depression, sense of longing, maybe self-harm and destructive behavior, because there is a part of me which knows that there is something more than what I'm currently living. So me and nature, me and we, and me and myself, my future possibility. A third slide, now, and then before now and after now. So the before now, well, otherwise known as the past, is everything in both my personal past, in my case 67 years of past, and all my memories, recollections, all the experiences, all the things that have happened to me. But it's more than that. It's more than that. It's also my ancestral past, parents, the family relationships, all those ancestors, some of whom I know of, and some of whom I do not know of, and also my past, my cultural heritage, all of that informs me now, today. It's all bundled up in all its complexities into now. There is also an after now, otherwise known as the future, later today and tomorrow onward. And that is already knowable. It may or may not be known to me, but it is knowable because it can be touched and it can be known and it can be discovered. And that's something which is a notion which I believe is true and is also gives me hope in a way that it's possible to discover that future by leaning into it. And I'm using terminology here from my teachers, leaning into that emerging future just to discover that future. Now then, what happens as soon as you're in a group, and we see here, whatever it is, 10 or so individuals, each with their visible and invisible, the divides that they carry and represent, and also their past, present and future, the now before and the now future. But imagine this could be 100 or 5,000 or 100,000 or a million or whatever. The group, imagine the depth of complexity that there is as soon as you bring people together, even in a small group like this of 10 people, because all of those levels of communication are all happening all at the same time. I had imagined that I would draw lines between all the different connections here, but it immediately ended up as looking just like a complete crazy spaghetti junction. So I decided not to do that, but just to illustrate the point about the complexity that happens when you are within a group, whether you're a facilitator or a leader in some way, or just participating in that group. The level of complexity is pretty eye-watering, really, and mind-boggling. Because there's lots of questions all the time, and sometimes people are smiling, like in this image, but sometimes maybe not smiling. So there's a lot of complexity. And so I participate in those groups like we all do. And there's an image here of when I was in a group at a time of reflection, when I went away for a week, and this was the group of people who were just about to come together to reflect and think and share their experiences, both of their immediate past, their current feelings, and perhaps also their sense of their emerging future. And also, of course, then in the world of work and collaboration, where people work together, people, as in this image, were trying to make sense of a process which had been going at this point for some month, no, it hadn't, 2 or 3 months, and trying to make sense of it, trying to crystallize the material that had come out from an earlier meeting with many more people, with 20 or 30 people, and we're now trying to make sense of it. So all of that complexity came into this discussion with the small group of 5 of us who were trying to work this stuff out. So yeah, being in groups and living in communities and groups is pretty challenging. So now let's think about the visible and the invisible a little bit, and think about dig deeper into some of that invisible stuff. So traditionally, and for, well, no more decades, centuries, probably millennia, we have we've taken stuff that has been presented to us, if you like, as a traditional notion of education. Teacher knows, you don't. You sit there with open mouth or open mind, and you try, and stuff gets pushed in. And that's it has some merits, but it's got substantial demerits. So imagine this, that you were to think about changing that way of thinking, that way of being, that way of being in the world, and think, I'm going to suspend my judgments about what I've always taken to be true, and suspend my judgments about what I've been told. And try to see something new. I've always seen it this way, but maybe there is something new. This is unsettling, this is difficult, it's challenging. Because you might then be inclined to feel like letting go of something, letting go of some long-held beliefs which have given you security, and because that's how the world is, and then letting go, and maybe letting go of some words, maybe letting go of some actions or behaviors or ways of being in the world. And on the way you're doing those things, on the way to connecting to a deeper source within you and beginning to discover and touch what that future could be for you, what the future is inviting you to become. So you let go of some things, and as you do so, some new will come. And in my experience, were the times, which has happened a number of times, when I've eventually had the courage to let go of things. There is a fear and a void, and then things come. They somehow sort of wait, and wait until the space is there, and then you can let them come. And feels a bit confusing and difficult and chaotic, perhaps. And you start practicing, and you prototype, you do things, and you practice, and maybe it doesn't go very well, like some of the work that I'm doing, experimenting with doing videos, prototyping, trying, failing, trying again, and slowly getting better. And then getting to a point of performing from seeing a whole system of me as part of we, of me, my individual, if you like, my ego, being part of a whole sort of ecological system, both of the people and of the physical environment that I'm in, and trying to perform and being able to perform by practice as part of that whole. So that's a good thing, and that's what I try to do, and in a variety of ways. And there are ways also of not doing that. And so we see this also in ourselves. This is not just something that they do it that way and I do it this way, but that we all have this potential within all of us. We all have the potential to be absent rather than to be present and to get in contact with ourselves, to be absent and to deny and to... Someone said to me at that conference, she said, "Oh, you mean it's like being blind and then unblinding ourselves?" So as we go down the bottom of that U, it's unblinding ourselves. But the top part, the entrenching and the descending, is like getting more and more blind, being more and more tunnel vision, more and more holding on to those things that we think are true, and we hold on to like grim death. I was talking with someone the other day who was doing that and was seeking to convince me of the truth of his religious conviction, and well, in the 5 or 10 minutes we spoke, was holding on desperately to that. I expect I'll meet him at some point in the future, and I shall listen and see if it's possible for him not to hold on. And it's his choice, but of course I feel there is greater joy to be found in another way than holding on and limiting and entrenching one's view. And also then in the sense that one can then start acting, you start acting that out, then you start manipulating and indeed abusing or indeed terrorizing others, and disembodying myself. What I feel is what I do. I become then capable of fulfilling, of taking, doing terrible things which damage and indeed destroy other people and life on the planet, either directly or indirectly. So there we are. We have a choice about which way we want to go, and we all embody all this potential, and it then gets pretty confusing. It all kind of whizzing around in our head, and it can be very muddling and challenging, which is why we need the help of friends. Maybe we need the help of going for a walk. Maybe we need the help of professional advisors. Maybe we need the help of a group who could help us get things clear as we have that sort of yes-no dialogue and battle within us. it's a struggle. So my choice, and it's enriching for me and fulfilling for me, is to be involved with groups. That feels nourishing for me. That's why I've started doing it years and years and years ago, and have practiced, and I guess got better at it, and moved from being highly nervous and not really knowing what I was doing, but sort of finding my way, to having a much clearer notion of my intervention with a group of people whom I'm working with. I was very struck by this quote that you see at the top of the screen. The success of an intervention depends on the interior condition of the intervener. We don't go when we are in a group, whether we are in a position as a facilitator or as a chair or whatever, or whether we are there as a participant. Our interior condition will have an impact, because we are intervening in one to a greater or lesser extent, and that has an impact on the people around us. And then you'll see Nancy Klein's quote as well. Everything depends on our thinking. I can't change the rest of the world. I can't change even probably little bits of it, but I can have an influence on that, and that influence is the stronger because of the thinking that I may do, and the clarity of my thinking, and the depth of engagement that I may have with myself and my sense of the future, and indeed then being able to help other people connect with the sense of the group self, or the group ambition, or the group sense of where they're moving and what they may be able to discover. And we do influence every meeting we attend, both by our intention, our words, our actions, and even by our silence. And I honour Lois, who died last year, who I remember saying that to me years and years and years ago. And I thought, oh yes, that sounds pretty good. And it's true. I think that's true. And I found it to be true. We will influence, even if you're the person sitting there silently, you will influence. So I find it fascinating and engaging and constantly nourishing and intriguing to be in a group and to work with a group, and to be engaged as a facilitator in a group is a privilege, to try to help that group come alive. And with that life, good things happen. So that's my choice, based on my understanding of the disruptions and the world in which we are all part. And then in the session with the people in the room, I ask them to reflect on their point in their life right now, and what choice they want to make. They can make a choice. They can't make a choice about, and you can't make a choice. I can't make a choice what goes on around me, but I can make a choice about my reaction to it, my response to it, what happens, how I react to it. And that I have, the only constraint to that is my inner demons and my inner constraints and my inner challenges and all that goes on between one ear and the other. So make a choice, and make a continuing choice, not just one choice for one day, but know that we have a choice about which way we wish to go, whether we wish to go deeper or whether we wish to go into a sense of being absent from ourself. And know also that as we make that choice, we may be moving into a learning zone. And the learning zone, of course, can be pretty challenging and pretty difficult, because, well, we're learning and we haven't done it before, or we don't feel so good about it. But that learning zone then means that the comfort zone, the things we are comfortable with, will then get bigger and bigger and bigger. And my own experience of that is in working with groups where things now that I can manage, I wouldn't say with ease, but certainly with a degree of comfort and confidence. Some years ago, it was kept me awake the night before, and was a real challenge. So we can expand our comfort zone and be more alive. So a few comments about facilitation. If facilitation is your chosen way, here's just a few thoughts about some things that I think are worth remembering as far as facilitation is concerned. The first is that it is a multi-tool. I couldn't find an image of even one that was vastly bigger than this. Hundreds, probably thousands of methods and ways of interventions, like in this wonderful Swiss Army knife, with all these tools. The challenge and the skill is knowing which one to use when, which one to draw on when, and to bring your presence to the engagement with a group, as well as bringing the right tool or tools that will work for that particular group at that particular time. So facilitation is a balance of being and doing, and it's like surfing. I love swimming. I can't surf. I tried to learn once, failed abysmally, kept falling off. Well, in fact, I couldn't even get on the board. But if one is surfing, I imagine that you experience that each wave is different. Each meeting is different. And you can fall off. You're a very experienced surfer. You've been facilitated lots of meetings. You can still fall off. And you can move on from that to be able to catch the next wave, because I'll come to that in a moment. You can always find a way of moving forward, but it's a matter of being in the moment and knowing that this is a special moment, and then bringing the tools to bear that are needed at the time. So a meeting is, of course, just one part of a whole process. It is both an event. A wave comes along, and it comes and goes, and it washes up the beach. There's a before, there's a during, there's an after. But it's also just part of an overall bigger process, like the tide going in and out, like all the waves that there are, all the meetings that there are everywhere. So a meeting is a meeting, but it's not an event. It's part of a process where a group of people come together, in which there can be challenging moments. The question is whether you're up for that. Do you want to be experiencing those and with people in those difficult moments, talking about those awkward subjects and unexplored areas, maybe sinking into quicksand from time to time? So it's not simple, and there are dangers, but there are also tremendous joys. Safety is vitally important. Containment. There was a colleague speaking at the conference, a whole session about the importance of containment. It was in Polish, so I didn't understand all of it, but I know her, and I know what the kind of things that she would say, and she would be saying that containment is a fundamental requirement. Maybe there is the physical safety, which we may assume is there. It may or may not be, but it is often there. But the emotional safety must be created so that people can then, as it were, come out of their shell a little bit, like the snail comes out when it's safe, in order to be able to contribute and to give of their best. If the safety is not there, they're not going to do that. Another essential is just distilling and stating the purpose of why you're meeting together, whether it's for 1 or 2 hours or a 3-day international conference or whatever. By the end of our time together, we will have A, B, C, or A, B, or A, but probably not A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, because you're not going to be able to achieve that much. But to know that those things that you are going to have at the end of your meeting at, for example, 4 p.m. this afternoon, are achievable. You, in your heart of hearts, you know that it's achievable within the time and within the circumstances that you have, and within the dynamic within the group. So state the purpose of that meeting in a way that can be understood by an intelligent and curious child of 6. They can say, oh yeah, I get it. They're not going to say, what do you mean by that? It's not some sort of gobbledygook. Create a physical environment which says you matter. Nancy Klein said this to me once, and I think is in her book, Time to Think books, and it's very obvious, very, very obvious really, but it says as people walk in, this meeting looks like it matters to someone, because look how they've created the environment. Indeed, the Profectus Conference was like that. The moment I walked in, I thought, this matters to people. Wow, this has got a really good feel about it. Real care and attention has been given to this. And that nothing can go wrong. Nothing can go wrong. Even if you fall off the surfboard, even if things appear to go wrong, if you listen to really what is going on in the group, you can find a way to move forward. It might be that you need to invoke the power of the pause and just stop for a while and listen and to discover what is happening for you, for the group, for everyone. But when you discover that, and as you discover that, then you will find a way of moving forward. Starting well and ending well is a pretty good thing. Someone once said to me, you know, if you start well and end well, well, the middle 80% or something will look after itself. Really important to give attention to how you start a meeting, and both beforehand and during the meeting, think about how am I going to bring this to a good conclusion. So a good landing is important, and I've discovered that both by doing it many times, but also the one or two times when it hasn't worked out, and I remember those times and learn from them. So there we are, coming to the end now. I'm part of a member of the International Association of Facilitators, which is, last time I looked, about 1,800 people worldwide in 7 regions around the whole world, all people who practice working with groups and positively intervening with groups. Some of those members are certified, like me, are certified professional facilitators. This is the internationally recognized standard for facilitation based on core competencies, which through a very rigorous process, a CPF person judged to be a certified professional facilitator, a CPF, is judged to have attained. It's not easy, I can attest to that. But it was a privilege to be judged by my peers to be at that standard. So there we are. That was the presentation I gave in Krakow, and I wish you a lot of good luck, and hope maybe one day we might meet together.